just wait for my slides to come up here. There we go. Aloha kako. My name is Matt Jachowski. I'm from Maui. I'm a scientist and engineer. I'm a proud Hawaii public school graduate, and it goes without saying, that I'm a proud Kanaka Maoli. For the past year, I've been using my skills with data and technology to help find and fund housing solutions for our displaced families in Lahaina. And through that effort, I got to meet Kuhio and work with CNHA. When Kuhio asked me to be here today to talk, I felt a great sense of kuleana, not just because this convention is like a beacon for our community, but also because my ohana actually comes from Waimea and Keauhou. So I hope to honor them and honor all of you today with this talk, and I hope you walk away with some ike and some inspiration, hopefully. So first, in Hawaii, Native Hawaiians only earn 84 cents for every $1 earned by non-Native Hawaiians. We can look at every industry, and we can see that public administration, which is basically working for the government, is the only industry where Native Hawaiians earn wages on par with our non-Native Hawaiian population. In every other industry, the wage gap ranges from 93 cents down to just 69 cents per dollar that non-Native Hawaiians earn. You might have noticed that tourism is not on that list. That's because tourism isn't officially recognized as an industry by the Census Bureau. But if we look at the 5 industries that make up tourism, we see that Native Hawaiians also earn less than non-Native Hawaiians. This is problematic, right? Because tourism is basically the commodification and the monetization of our culture, and we're earning less than everybody else from this. So in real dollar terms, that means that Native Hawaiians are earning $3,000 to $27,000 per year less on average, depending on what industry they work in. So I wanted to understand, why does this wage gap exist? Because if we don't understand why, we can't begin to propose solutions. So it turns out if you analyze these industries, Native Hawaiians are underrepresented in Hawaii's largest industries. So the industries that pay most of the wages and salaries out across the state don't have as many Native Hawaiians as they should. Public administration, which is working for the government, is the largest industry, followed by healthcare, right? Our doctors and our nurses. Our Native Hawaiians are not represented enough in these industries. We can also look at the highest paying industries in the state. Finance and insurance pays an average wage of $86,000 per year, and Native Hawaiians are underrepresented. Professional, scientific, and technical services, so that's our accountants, our lawyers, our scientists, our engineers, we're underrepresented in all these fields. This is because most high-wage industries have many workers with college degrees. But if we look at the education levels of Native Hawaiians versus non-Native Hawaiians, we see a huge problem. Here, the brown bars represent non-Native Hawaiians and the green bars represent Native Hawaiians. If we look at the populations that have only a high school degree, we see that it's much more common for Native Hawaiians to stop once they get a high school degree, over 40% of us. On the flip side, we can look at Native Hawaiians and non-Native Hawaiians who earn a bachelor's degree or higher. So that's a 4-year college degree or more, and we see that the situation is flipped. Almost 40% of non-Native Hawaiians achieve this educational level, but less than 20% of Native Hawaiians achieve this. This education gap has actually persisted for at least 50 years. And if there's one graph that you remember from my talk today, I want you to remember this. So this shows on the x-axis is the year that different workers in Hawaii were born. So workers born in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I stop at the 90s because anyone younger could still be in school. And I'm showing the percent of the students that stop at a high school degree. That green line shows us that if we go back all the way to the 50s, Native Hawaiians have been stuck at around 40% for receiving high school degree, or for stopping at a high school degree, while non-Native Hawaiians have been closer to 20%. This is the education gap. This is a huge problem. This is basically a moat that's keeping our Hawaiian people from benefiting fully from this economy. This is important because lower education means lower wages. We can look at Native Hawaiians in Hawaii. We can see the average wage for a Native Hawaiian worker who has only a high school degree is $43,000 per year. But once we look at Native Hawaiians with bachelor's degrees or higher, there's a 69% increase, and they're earning $73,000 per year. That's a huge increase. So in summary, right, we're seeing that Native Hawaiians earn less than non-Native Hawaiians in almost every industry. I wanted to see how does this affect housing. I think we all know that there's a housing crisis in this state, and there's been one for many years. Basically, we tend to live in similar homes to the non-Native Hawaiian population, but we earn less money. How do we manage to do that? We do it by putting more people into the same homes. So one way of looking at this is to look at overcrowding. There's actually a formal way to measure overcrowding. And what we see is the national average is for 3% of homes to be crowded and 1.5% of homes to be very crowded. For our non-Native Hawaiian population here in Hawaii with our housing crisis right now, it's more than twice that rate. Okay, so 7% of our non-Native Hawaiian households are crowded and 4% are very crowded. That is the most crowded housing in the United States if you only look at non-Native Hawaiians. But the Native Hawaiian population has it twice as bad. Okay, 14% of our houses are crowded and 7% are very crowded. And then if we look at our renter population, because renters tend to have lower incomes, they are 3 times more crowded than our non-Native Hawaiian population. Okay, that means we have 15,700 Native Hawaiian households that are crowded and 7,500 Native Hawaiian households that are very crowded. There's a naive interpretation of this that I hear from people who don't take the time to look at the data. And they think there's no problem with our Hawaiian households crowding into houses and living on top of each other because we just want to live in these large multi-generational families. But that's not the reality. The reality is that that's just how many of our families are affording to live here in the first place. For some Hawaiians, this unaffordable and crowded housing just isn't worth it anymore, and it's leading to a huge amount of migration. So now I want to compare our Native Hawaiians here in Hawaii versus our Native Hawaiians on the continent. As soon as our families move to the continent, crowding drops by more than half. Okay, only 6% of Native Hawaiian households on the mainland are crowded, and only 3% are very crowded. Along with that comes an increase in average wages, right? So no wonder the draw for so many of our people to migrate to the mainland is so strong. So how much migration are we talking about? This is one way to look at it. We can look at all the Native Hawaiians who were born in Hawaii. Each of these little icons here represents 5,000 people. The brown icons are people who were born in Hawaii and still live in Hawaii. The red icons are Native Hawaiians who were born in Hawaii and have migrated away. 1 out of every 4 Native Hawaiians who was born here in Hawaii no longer lives here. They have migrated to the continent. In contrast, or like another way of looking at this is we can look at all the Native Hawaiians who are living in Hawaii today. So again, that those brown icons are the same. It's Native Hawaiians who live in Hawaii now and were born in Hawaii. And then the green icons are Native Hawaiians who've done the reverse migration. They were born on the continent and have migrated back. Less than 1 out of 10 Native Hawaiians who lives here in Hawaii today has done that reverse migration. Almost all of the Native Hawaiians who live here were born here. You put these together and you can see a lot more red than green. What that means is that our net migration is that we're losing Hawaiians. We have, compared to the population that was born here, we have lost over 60,000 Native Hawaiians to the continent. That's a change of almost 20%. You can repeat this analysis for the non-Native Hawaiian population, which is bigger to begin with. And what we see is that population has grown by almost 200,000 people and has grown by 21%. So Native Hawaiians today only make up about 1 out of every 5 people in the state of Hawaii, but our population is shrinking while the non-Native Hawaiian population is growing, and I think that's a problem. So to recap, are Native Hawaiians earning less than non-Native Hawaiians? This is because we have lower levels of educational attainment. Lower wages and unaffordable housing are leading to limited housing options. This leads to crowding into housing or migration to the continent, and as a result, our Native Hawaiian population is shrinking. There are 2 core problems here. The first problem is that we don't have enough affordable resident housing. This isn't just a problem for Native Hawaiians, it's a problem for all residents here in Hawaii. But because we tend to be lower wage earners and we struggle more with housing, any improvements to the affordable housing situation will benefit Native Hawaiians a lot. Second, we need to have better educational outcomes, and that is a problem that we need to specifically solve for our Native Hawaiian population. So let's talk about housing solutions. Each one of these bullet points I'm going to talk about next is worth a whole talk in and of itself, probably a whole conference in and of itself, but I'll fly through them. We need to build more affordable and attainable housing. We need to discourage the proliferation of second homes and luxury homes. And in cases where it makes sense, we need to convert short-term rentals into resident housing. I really like to talk about this last point. It's what I'm actively working on right now. We don't have a visitor housing crisis. We have a resident housing crisis, right? So let's put our residents first. And then the Department of Hawaiian Homelands can also have a huge impact on housing. They've already housed 10,000 Hawaiian families, but there's 29,000 more families on the wait list, okay? That represents 26%. That represents 1 out of every 4 households, Native Hawaiian households in the state. If they could house all those families, that would have a huge impact on reducing crowding and reducing the amount of migration we have. Now I want to talk about education. This is a tougher one. But we're in luck because we have a couple institutions that are already working on this. We have the Kulakaiapuni Immersion Program that's part of the public schools and Kamehameha schools. Both of those programs, right, have dramatically expanded since I was a kid growing up on Maui. And they're really pioneering Hawaiian culture-based education. And I don't think we've had enough time yet to see that reflected in the data with the education gap, and I really hope it makes a difference. The University of Hawaii is single-handedly responsible for most of the higher education that our Native Hawaiian people have received. And the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, they focus on 4 things, and one of those 4 things is education. But I wanna segue here to a little bit of a personal story. These are my tutus. My grandma, Lena Ala Lee Apau, and my grandpa, Robert Apau Jr. My grandma came from a really poor family. She actually got to attend Kamehameha schools as an indigent student, so she was too poor to go there, but they let her go anyway. She was able to then go on to the University of Hawaii and get a teaching degree. She taught kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd grade in the public school system her entire career, including here at Na'alehu Elementary School. She believed in the power of education so much that she encouraged my grandpa, Robert Apau Jr., to go to college when he was 30 years old, when they already had their first kid at home, and he went full-time supported by her public school teacher's salary. He got degrees in math and chemistry and went on to teach at the Honolulu Community College. When he retired, he was the head of the metal shop there. Their belief in education touched the lives of at least hundreds of students, but it also extended to their kids. All of their kids became doctors, including my aunt, Roberta Apau Ikemoto, who was the first Native Hawaiian woman to get an MD and become licensed to practice medicine in the state of Hawaii. She spent her entire career practicing medicine here. And this legacy has continued out to their grandchildren. I'm one of them. All of us got bachelor's degrees, some got master's degrees, and there's even a few PhDs. And there's a 3rd generation now that are surely gonna be okay. And the reason why I bring this up is, I look at these 2 people, and they valued education, and so they made these sacrifices to make it happen, and it's impacted now 3 generations of Hawaiians. And I think about, what if we could do this for thousands and thousands of Native Hawaiians, right? What if we could give them the tools they need to survive in this society we have now that was not built by us or for us, but we're forced to live with, right? The skills to earn these higher wages so we can live here in dignified housing and not migrate away. So an early version of my talk was called Aloha Means Goodbye, because I was looking at a lot of this migration data and not feeling so hot. But I don't want to end on that note. I want to end on a more positive note. And there's a lot of prominent Hawaiian leaders in the audience today, and they're often called exceptional. But when I think about my keiki, and when I think about the over 200 haumana who are in the audience today, and our many young Native Hawaiians, I don't want any of them to be exceptional Hawaiian leaders. I want Hawaiian leadership to be so commonplace, right? That no one is exceptional. And so, I see at the core of this problem, this education gap. I hope we can find ways to move thousands and thousands of our young Hawaiians across that education gap, and they can help lead us and upraise our lahui and upraise the people who can't cross that education gap so that we're all better off, bringing the best of Western education and our ike kupuna, and be led by the people who are of this land, of this aina. So let's stop that out migration, right? And let's keep Hawaii Hawaiian. And finally, if you're interested in this, I actually spent like weeks and weeks researching this, so if anyone wants to see more of my data, it's there. And mahalo for all of your time.